The next selection is Maine's Black Future, conceptualized and created by Genius Black for the Maine Monitor.
Black Future.
My name is Genius Black.
And I am Alfine Nathalie.
And you are listening to Maine's Black Future. More from Genius and Alfine in a moment. Now, a story from Maine's unique Black history. Captain London Atus came to Machias as an enslaved person in the year 1772. He was a teenager. His master was Reverend James Lyon. He was the new reverend in Machias. Moving forward in time, London Atus was known as a war hero. He served 5 years in the military during the Revolutionary War. He served under Colonel John Allen as a private. Moving forward in time, he served aboard the privateer. It was a ship called the Winthrop. A privateer, I'll define that for you. A private person or ship that engages in maritime warfare under commission of war. Upon this service, London combined his pay and his prize money and purchased his own freedom. Later, London founded the village of Atusville in Machias. And once established, Atusville grew. In about the year 1850, during the heyday of its population, Atusville had roughly 6 family homes, as well as multiple individuals who were renting or squatting in that section of town. Atusville was known as a black section of town, founded by a mixture of enslaved people and freed people. London's legacy as a rebel soldier is notable. At the centennial of the beginning of the Revolutionary War, on June 22nd of 1875, the Machias Union published a paragraph about Captain London Atus. Quote, London was a true patriot. After the battles of 1775 and 77, in which he rendered good service, he procured a small vessel, took in some boards at Machias, and sailed for Boston. It was at a time when starvation threatened the settlers in Machias. London had good luck. He ran by the British blockading vessels along the shore, reached Boston, exchanged his lumber for provisions, and made his way safely back to Machias. Probably no vessel ever entered Machias River giving so much joy to the people as did the little craft laden with provisions. London Atus, Captain. This occurred probably in 1780. End quote. From Maine's Visible Black History, The First Chronicles of Its People, by H. Price and Gerald E. Talbot. The year 1780. That's more than 80 years before the official ending of chattel slavery in the United States. Think about that. As you consider the state of Maine's unique Black history, and as we create Maine's Black future. Connecting the state of Maine's rich Black history to Black changemakers weaving Maine's Black future today. So, Alfine.
Genius.
One of the things that I like to start with to get the audience familiar with who they're listening to, I want to talk a little bit about your origin, or really, where did you come from?
I grew up right up the street from here on Spring Street in Portland, Maine. Prior to that, I was born in Nairobi, Kenya. to a Kenyan mother, a Congolese father who had some big international dreams. So in 1991, we took a light-handed flight is how I could call it. And what I mean by that is my mom came with nothing but a plastic bag and some napkins, they call it, for me, the baby, and landed in Portland, Maine in January of 91 and haven't looked back since.
All right. In 91.
Yes.
Yeah. When I was thinking about the year 1991, and there's some notable things that happened in 1991.
Ooh.
Yeah. So first of all, South Africa apartheid dismantled. And I was like, ooh, I don't want to oversimplify that and act like there was ever a single moment. But when I was looking into that, 91 was a critical year.
Very much so.
One of the things that stood out to me is, in terms of the war, the coalition forces going in and getting the Iraqis out of Kuwait, for instance. This was a big year, but just saying that did go down. Then also the former Soviet Union was breaking up. So places like Azerbaijan and Ukraine and Lithuania were becoming their own places, So I was like, man, you and them napkins was landing and everything, But there was a lot going on in 91.
There was.
Yeah.
There was. And I feel like they, as in my parents, came with that spirit of revolution, of independence, of seeking new ground to plant some healthy seeds.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the rest of the world was kind of on a similar trajectory.
Straight up. And there was shifting for sure. Really, Alfine, you grew up in different areas around Portland.
Yes.
I love Portland very much so. And one of the things when we were chatting before, you really associated growing up in Portland with a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
All credit goes to the parents, Marguerite and Alfie Nota. They're a unique bunch, first and foremost. I think anyone who has ever, will ever meet them would see what I'm talking about. And it's because of them that I had this upbringing that, I still dream about to this day. My mom was the hardworking breadwinner, about her money, about her bag, as the kids say. And wasn't even a month before she was hired at the Regency, changing bedding, doing, what would they call that line of work? Like housekeeping, essentially. Housekeeping at the Regency, and Dad immediately, I think, got into schooling. And shortly after that creative bug began to itch my dad. And so it wasn't before long that he was connecting with other creatives in town, and also just digging into his own kind of artistic muse and thinking about, well, what story and what version of myself do I want to share with this new population? And so while I'm learning the ABCs, I'm also learning about the, different African instruments, about different artists, about different genres of music, about different performance styles. So I'm getting my sort of fundamental, U.S. standard education learning, but also like intro to the arts. And that's what made for a very colorful upbringing.
Absolutely. And I think that's brilliant to just, I guess, kind of look back and just recognize. When we were chatting before, you mentioned to me that, speaking of your dad, when you were young, you were attending, I think, Reiki Elementary.
Yes.
If folks in Portland will know what Reiki is. And you were telling me a bit about, he used to walk you to school.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah. He would walk me to school every day. This is kindergarten. My kindergarten teacher was named Mrs. King, which I just thought was super cool. So I'm like, but you're a lady. How are you Mrs. King? So Mrs. King was my kindergarten teacher. And then I remember the crosswalk woman, her name was, or she went by Brownie. And so these were two older women that were like staples in my childhood. And yeah, my dad, classic, proud Black father who I just can't say enough good things about. But yeah, we would have our kind of morning ritual. This is the guy that taught me about the morning ritual. We wake up, brushing our teeth, putting on our clothing. And then, of course, we had like our mantra before I leave the house. And his mantra was one word repeated just about incessantly until we felt it. And that word was power. So this is after everything, after we got the clothes on, the jacket is chosen, shoes are tied, lunch is packed, my homework is in the backpack. Everything else is taken care of. We're standing by the door. Okay, you know what time it is. And so we hold both of our fists together, and then he'll start, power. I say, power, power, power. And we keep going, power, 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 until we both feel it. And so we say our power, and then we are walking on our way, and it's just about a 3-block walk. And then we meet Miss Brownie, and she always has some fun story for us. And I think she was also excited to see this like energetic Black man with his daughter who's just happy to go to school. And so it was a whole vibe.
I love it. And I know that your dad has been a great influence in the life of your family and yourself. And even when you were telling me about kind of walking and those I love hearing the power mantra. That's what's up.
Yes.
You really highlighted how he eventually stopped walking you to school.
Yes.
Right? Which is its own rite of passage. Mm-hmm. So for me, it was really cool to hear you talk about coming of age and having your moments here in Portland. You guys were, I would say, maybe of the few Black families that you saw in Portland.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very much so, especially first gen, you know?
Yeah. And that's that, right?
Yeah.
But I love, as someone who's from away and who came to Maine, it's always inspiring and grounding when I talk to Black folks that came up here and they was like, yeah, we been here. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just been all the way alive.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
So I appreciate it. I noticed in the past when you mentioned your dad, you told me he used to like model and make music. Tell me a little bit more about that.
He's like the modern day Renaissance man. I mean, he's done a little bit of everything. You know, I think in the core of his heart, he is really the quintessential artist. And I say that to say that he has explored a variety of artistic mediums, just looking for different venues of self-expression, because he is a man with a lot to share. Back in those days, the way that I perceived him, or what he was most active with, was performance art. So dance, storytelling, workshop hosting, and working with kids a lot, teaching them about African culture, drumming, African dance. Yeah, that's the best way I could encapsulate it. Prior to that, or I would say alongside that, yes, of course, you look at the guy. I mean, he's a good-looking man, so he definitely spent some time behind the camera. But you know what's funny though? I gotta tell this story. He was, the word that we use now is scouting. Mm-hmm. Scouted by a gentleman who I also want to say lived in town. His name was Everett. I forget his last name. Everett. He was a great photographer. Took a lot of incredible photos of my dad that ended up winning awards.
Wow.
Making money, doing cool things out here. So he was scouted by Everett, who, when he approached him, he said, there's something about you. I don't know who you are, where you come from, but there's something about you. I'd love to get you in my studio. My dad, I mean, he's like, do anything at least once kind of guy. He's like, okay, sure. Where's your studio? So they meet a couple times, have some photo shoots, take beautiful photos of which I have all the negatives for to this day. So they get some shoots in, take these beautiful shots, and Everett begins to see the, let's say, photographic potential that my dad carries. So they continue to work more, and to the extent of traveling now to beautiful locations in New England to take more nature-based, outdoor-type shots. Took some incredible photos that Everett was like, I got to submit this to this competition. Submitted it to the competition, ended up winning the prize. Everett comes back and tells my dad, he's like, when I met you, I would be what folks would call today a racist. I didn't know any Black people. I didn't really hang around with them. I didn't really want anything to do with Black people. And you, Alfine Nathalie, have changed me.
Wow.
What?
Yeah, whoa.
And this isn't just through the photos, but I think as well through the essence that permeates any room that this guy steps into. This guy being my dad. And so, yeah, to be raised by a man with that kind of zhuzh about him, it's quite an honor.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
Yeah, so that's one of my favorite stories about his kind of modeling adventure. And I wish, now it's turning into like a show and tell. I wish I had the comp cards to share with you, because you'd be like, what? Wow, oh my gosh.
Yeah, I believe it. I believe it. And for me, shout out your dad for following his passions and being artistic. And it's not always easy to do, but, the example set and the self-trust that it takes to even do that, that is an amazing example, I think, for our children often. So, yeah, it's just inspiring for me to hear you talk about your dad.
I appreciate you recognizing that, and also recognizing the value in hearing that. Self-trust, that's a big piece of his experience and his story for sure.
We all have things that we bring to situations, knowledge, wisdom, experience. And though our value, our worth is very different from those things, one of the things that I like to talk about a little bit is just some of the ways that you've been acknowledged, and how Maine is already becoming the future that I know that it is, which is brilliant and very Black. Yeah. We'll get more to that. I just want to take a second to acknowledge you and allow you to just highlight some of those acknowledgments that kind of, have followed you when you do share yourself.
Yeah.
Okay?
I appreciate that. I appreciate you making some space for that. It can be tough to receive and also sit in that acknowledgement, but it has its place. I would say the most recent acknowledgement that still sits quite poignantly in my heart is the recognition from the Portland Press-Herald. I was gratefully listed as a 2022 Mainer to be thankful for. I was like, wait, you're thankful for me? What? Okay, all right. That was incredibly meaningful for a variety of reasons. One of the primary reasons is because a dear friend of mine, now with us in spirit, was given the same award in 2020, Nicole Mokeme. They were acknowledging her for the work that she was doing with Rise and Shine Youth Retreats. And this last year, of course, our community has been in mourning over the loss of Nicole. And there's a lot of work that I have been doing with great friends of hers and myself to continue on that legacy. And so to come to, I think it was top of November, and get that call, I was like, Nicole, you got something to do with this. Very much an honor. And also to be recognized by the paper of the city that I grew up in.
Yeah.
So meaningful. It's so nice to feel like I am a part of the fabric of this town.
Yeah.
And to not feel like as much of an outsider as I sometimes feel in my own head.
Yeah.
So that was incredibly meaningful.
I also had that same feeling. Like, I look at Portland representing for Alfine and Alfine representing for Portland, like back and forth. And like you said, the actual fabric of the city. I just wanted to quote, you can go to portlandpressherald.com and check it out, the 2022 Mainers to be thankful for. But I just wanted to quote the subtitle, which is, they wrote, every year, we ask you to tell us about people in the community who go out of their way to give of themselves for the benefit of others. This year's 10 Mainers to be thankful for are activists, advocates, coaches, caring neighbors, leaders, and spirit lifters. End quote. And I was like, yeah, leaders and spirit lifters. All right, Alfine. Really, I also will say, have to point out, the staff photographer at the time was Gregory Reck. I really was feeling all the photographs that Gregory created as well. Yeah. So to me, it was really a really great and positive and realistic reflection of some people that are out here, but everyone doesn't know what they're up to or the history behind what they're up to. So yeah, really shout you out for that. And again, thank you for representing for Portland.
Some time ago, but still very relevant in my life, is being awarded the Mitchell Scholarship. The Mitchell Scholarship is a award that's given to a graduating senior from every high school in Maine. This is possible through a foundation called the Mitchell Institute, which is founded by Senator George Mitchell, who is passionate about post-secondary education for Mainers, for Maine students.
Yes.
And so they give us a monetary reward to help us attend a college or university of our choosing, preferably within either in Maine or New England. But I think the stipulations have since expanded. But they have been a great resource just in terms of, I would say, personal and professional connections and just development. They are also have been just so incredibly supportive of my entire journey and future dreams. So I always feel it very necessary to shout them out and also to shout out George Mitchell and everything that he's created with that foundation.
Yeah, when you were telling me, I was like, man, that's such a great idea to just really to support resource-wise seniors from all across the state, right? Because there is this burgeoning reality of humans that are going to go be whatever is next, right? So I like that idea, and I was reading a little bit about George Mitchell and a couple things that are notable. He was a state senator. Formerly, he was the majority leader. So he was a senator from 1980 to 1995. Then he was the majority leader from 1989 to 95. That's when he retired. I also learned that he did graduate from Bowdoin College in 1954, and I did graduate from Bowdoin College, but not in 1954. We did not know each other. We didn't even cross paths there. And I just don't have anything to do with this story, but it does have something to do with Bowdoin. But I was like, oh, shout out the homie. So again, I really do love when I start to look into the history. A big part of Maine's Black future is considering the history, far back and near back, and just what are these coordinates that have gotten us here, right? And so when I meet someone like you who shares these brilliant ideas and like I talk to you and I feel your heart and it's like, wow, that's so cool. I don't get that with everybody. And so then you start hearing about these other coordinates that just helped us get to where we are. And I think digging into that, again, as we actively create the Maine and the future that we want to live in, all of these things matter. Absolutely.
I like what you said, far back and near back. That's great. It's so accurate. Yeah, because there is a far back and a near back.
Both. Don't leave out any. Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely. Thank you. So thank you for highlighting that. I remember that, again, I was just so excited when I was first hearing like, oh, Alfine's getting it. I just make it happen. But whatever you want to happen, I see you making it happen. It makes me smile. And then I learn the details and I'm like, oh, whoa, One of the things I know that is you have coming up, I wanted to talk about Alfine TV.
Yeah.
Right? Because I know you're excited. I'm excited. I've heard other people feel excited and be excited. Just tell us a little bit about kind of, if you want to talk about how it's supported or where it came from, and then, of course, where it's going.
Whew. Okay. Just the way that my mind works, he really graduated from Bowdoin in 1954?
Yeah, 54.
That's wild. I did not realize. I didn't realize that's the kind of time we're working with. Okay, wow. Cool. Shout out George Mitchell.
Shout out George Mitchell.
So back to Alfine TV. What a blast. Well, Alfine TV is the culmination. Well, should I say culmination? I know Genius will appreciate this because we're particular about our words. It's that Virgo energy coming through.
For sure.
I don't know if culmination is the right word, but my mind is lagging today, so we'll stick with that. It is the culmination of a year's worth of work behind and in front of cameras. Starting at the hands of my father, really, who, when he had performances or showcases, workshops, he would have me film And he would have me film him and film these events. I also was his sound girl, too. So volume, plugging in wire, like that was me, his little roadie. So had a bit of that experience in my childhood. And then for university and high school, my passion was always holistic health and wellness. That's where I spent a lot of my studies and monies and time, blood, sweat, and tears have been poured into the study of that field. And so what I found is that oftentimes I'll have conversations with folks about various practices, various wellness modalities, whether it's Chinese medicine, herbalism, all the different kind of body-centered wellness practices, whether it's yoga, Pilates, dance, etc. And oftentimes people have no idea what I'm talking about. Juicing, what's that? I mean, yeah, I can go to the store and buy Welch's grape juice, but you mean you can make juice at your home? Yes, you can.
Yeah.
You totally can. A bit time consuming, but so worth it. And so I was like, what would be cool is if there was a place people could go to watch me talk about, and not just talk about, but also showcase exactly what I'm talking about. And thus was born the idea for Alfine TV. What it will ultimately be is a website, alfine.tv, that people can go to and subscribe monthly to watch video content hosted by me, having conversations, showcasing different appointments that I'm attending, all centered around holistic health and wellness. So when I say holistic, what I ultimately mean is body, mind, soul, spirit, sexuality, and of course, food.
Yeah.
So that is the very shortened gist of what Alfine TV is. But you asked a whole bunch of other questions too.
First of all, I think that's a good overview because I think that for someone who subscribes, there will be continuing value, right? You don't just take it all in at once. There's going to be some series is what I heard you telling me about. So, I do like for people to get that general overview. And one of the things that I also, you were saying to me, for instance, the value of a 15-minute walk every day.
Yeah.
Right? It's something you were talking about. You were talking to me about, what do you call it, femstrology?
Yes.
What's that?
So femstrology is basically the combination of the words feminine and astrology. Newsflash. And what that will ultimately be is the exploration of women's contribution to the field of spirituality. I have always been spiritually curious since I was very young, and what I've learned or observed is that, no disrespect, but white men dominate that field and very much guide and influence the world's spirituality and spiritual practices. So I just wanted to create a platform where we could hear other voices, particularly that of women who I feel represent goddess form on earth, right? And so I feel like there is no greater priestess than a woman to seek inspiration from. So that is from astrology. We will explore, of course, astrology, numerology, all the ologies, but certainly just ways to deepen into our spirituality.
And I just want to say the way you was just talking about it was bars. Like, okay, I wasn't writing it down, but I'm glad I was recording.
Appreciate it.
For sure. And one of the things that when I was just kind of, like you said, I asked a bunch of questions. I asked you questions before. And one of the things that I wrote down, you said, is that it is a space or a home where we can watch Black women highlight each other and tap into each other's wisdom.
Yes.
So you was already spitting bars, and I'm just bringing them back.
Nothing more to add. Absolutely.
Yeah, and I look forward to that. Although I don't identify as a Black woman, I will still be a subscriber and a participant, and I will be fed every time I go there. Keep eyes and ears open. Yeah. What I also want to do, because just to speak a little bit more and give folks some different angles of you, right? I want to talk about your connections to music. Talk to me a little bit about your connection with your dad and with music.
Well, My dad in music, he was the first person to, I would say, expose me to music. And by that, just playing music often and sharing with me all of the things that different music makes him feel. I know in my, mid-90s, early 90s, Dad was in like his revolutionary phase, his kind of coming of age, a young man, a new father in a new land, trying to cement his own identity. So he was heavy on Marley, heavy on Peter Tosh, Wailers, anything out of Jamaica. He was bumping it so much so that I thought he was a Rastafarian growing up. He had the locks, had it all down pat.
Yeah.
And then after mid-90s, so like 95, 96, the birth of my younger sister, that's when he got into more ethereal, instrumental piano music. And so I learned from him the ways that music can speak to us and for us in ways that we can't quite articulate ourselves. And I don't know if it's just being exposed to that extent or simply having my own knack for it, but I found myself taking on a similar sort of interest or way of expression, so much so that even Spotify today was like, hey, since you listen to us every day, like we've compiled like a soundtrack for your year so far. I'm like, oh man, that means I put in hours.
Yep.
But, rightfully so. I mean, it's the first medicine for me is music. So yeah, that's my little intro to music.
When you were young, even before verbal language and communication, there was music, there were songs. You did pick it up as a language, right? Like as like one of the modalities through which to communicate emotionally and ideas. And again, for both, I know Angelica, for you and Angelica, it's still alive and even growing. I'm a music dad too, you know what I mean? So like me being a producer, engineer and stuff, and like my teenagers definitely grew up listening to all my beats and all my music and everybody that was around me, right? But I hope it does good things. And so when I talk to Alfine, I'm like, yeah, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Not to be too selfish, but it's inspiring,
Yeah, as it should be. I mean, the influence and the impact that you represent as a dad it just ripples beyond ways that I think your children can even articulate. So.
Yeah, and I know when I think about like my dad, he was a fine woodworker, businessman, and different stuff. It's so interesting when I think back. I'm like, yeah, I definitely see a lot of what I picked up or just thought was normal, even if I used to think it was out of reach and stuff. So yeah, for me, I've been thinking about dad vibes and dad energy lately. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So those things being said, the last thing I want to ask you about music, just to give you a second to riff about it. Tell me how much you love Prince.
Oh gosh, how much time do we have left in this
Not that much time.
Not that much time. Oh gosh, how much do I love Prince? Where it starts is I've always, since I was a kid, even before I knew what colors were cool or anything, purple was always my favorite color. I got the pictures to prove this.
Oh, snap.
I remember going to school. I think my dad probably talked me out of it. Like if it was up to me, I would wear my purple. I had a turtleneck and these purple jeans, and that was my outfit. I had no problems with this outfit, showing up every day in the same purple gear. I just needed people to know. Red's cool, blues aren't, but purple? All right, so growing up, I wasn't familiar with Prince in my formative years at all. The most that I can recall of him is that anytime I would see him, he frightened me, quite honestly.
Yeah.
It's those intensive eyes. It's that stare. It's that kind of, kind of focused, like the way he looks, that glare is just very precise.
Yeah.
As a child, I'm like, what is up with, I didn't resonate with him as a child. Becoming an adult, however, I was like, oh, this guy's kind of cool. When Doves Cry, that was kind of my intro. The Beautiful Ones, of course. And of course, the Purple Rain soundtrack. Some of the tunes kind of eternal bops. Some of them I still skip over to this day. And it wasn't entirely until his passing that I really dug into his full catalog. I mean, beyond Purple Rain, beyond the more popular hits, but really dug into the full catalog and tried to understand him as not just a musician, but the man. And I'm like, holy moly, this was a guy that we were all very fortunate to share time and space with.
Yeah.
And when you get into ideologies, the different beliefs and philosophies that motivated the way that he moved in the music industry, and also the different thoughts that influenced his collaborative projects, everything. Just nothing but respect. And of course, when you get out to Paisley Park, it's just incredible to see that this, 5'2", light skin, heel wearing, eyeliner wearing person created all of this from nothing, essentially. He's just an inspiration beyond my wildest dreams. I think for him too. So yeah, Prince is just the eternal muse in many capacities, even beyond music.
Yeah, no, I love it. And I mean, I grew up listening to Prince, loving Prince. And then I started talking to you and I was like, no, she loves Prince. She understands. And it's one of those things where, like, you being a person who's, fashion forward and represents yourself well, you think about how you carry yourself. I believe you think about it. Or maybe you just pull it all off.
It's a little bit of both.
Okay. Well, I can understand that too. And I just think for me, when I'm at my age now, like when I was younger, I was just watching it go by. And now when you see someone who looks up to someone like Prince, I'm like, yeah, like you're someone who, like, he was like an aesthetic master.
Right.
Never mind his sonic mastery. Right? Like, so I'm like, yeah, you're right. He really was the dude,
Full package.
Yeah, good way to put it,
Yeah.
So definitely a legend, and just remembering him. But what I wanted to talk about, looking to the future. This is Maine's Black future. And I'm wondering, what do you feel or think or sense for Maine's Black future?
Question of the day. Question of the year. Question of the decade. What do I think or feel for Maine's Black future?
Yeah.
I said it before. I'll say it again. We have a bright Black future ahead of us. However, it does come with some prerequisites, in my humble opinion. And a couple of those are, A, we must live in the awareness of the value that we bring into every space we inhabit. We must recognize and live in awareness of the divinity of our existence on this planet. And therefore, C, we must stand in the unapologetic claiming and holding of our worth in every room, every interaction, every stage, every boardroom, every bedroom. All of it.
Absolutely. I hear that.
Yes. We are the flavor. We are the sauce. We are the soup of the day. We are it.
Yeah.
And we must always remember that.
I love that. I love those prerequisites. So y'all can go back and listen to all the spices and flavors that she just put out. As long as we represent those, then again, the future is black and brilliant and bright.
Amen.
That was Alfine. My name is Genius Black. More to come soon. I appreciate y'all. And this has been Maine's Black Future.